1, 2, 3, 4.
Back to It's Not a Sport, Season 3, Episode 14. We got a short episode for you, but a really, really good talk. The talk is about IPs or intellectual problems with them, why we don't see new IPs, and why remakes and franchising is so big within the gaming industry. So look forward to that talk later on. It's a talk. I think you should enjoy it, and it's hopefully grow some knowledge about the industry and why things are just decided the way they are. Of course, as always, we're going to talk about to news and then some reviews, game releases, same old. Let's get right into it, starting with League of Legends in LPL. We have Top Esports in first place, followed by Invictus Gaming, JD Gaming in third, Victory 5 and Sunning in fourth, Team WE and LGD Gaming in sixth, Vinci Gaming in eighth, Royals Never Give Up and Fun Plus in ninth, Billy 11th, Edward and Oh My God in 12th. 14th is E-Star and Rogue Warriors. 16th place is LNG Esports, and last place is Dominus Esports. In the LC Korea, we have Dragon X in first, followed by Genji and Damwon tied for second, T1 in fourth, Afrika Freaks in fifth, Sandbox Gaming, Team Dynamic, and KT Roster all tied for Hanwha Life and Seoul He Won Prince in ninth place. In LEC, we have Rogue and Mad Lion still tied for first. The SK Origin all tied for third. G2 and Misfits tied for sixth. XL and Team Vitality tied for eighth. And Skalak 04 in last place. In LCS America, we have Cloud9 and Team Liquid tied for first. TSM in third, followed by Evil Geniuses, FlyQuest, Golden Guardians tied for fourth, Counterlogic Gaming in seventh, 100 Thieves and Dignitas tied for ninth. In the Overwatch League, moving on, we have Shanghai in first, followed by Philadelphia in second, Guangzhou third, San Francisco, New York Excelsior, Florida Mayhem, Los Angeles Valiants, Atlanta, Hangzhou Spark, Seoul Dynasty, Los Angeles Gladiators in 12th, Toronto, Dallas, London, Houston, Chengdu Hunters, Injustice, and Boston is in last place. Moving on to game releases in July. We just had Ghost of Tsushima released on the 17th. We also had Death Stranding come out on the 14th. So some big quality PlayStation games hitting PC and both PlayStation at the same time. Looking forward, we have Showdown collection. We have a Yakuza game coming out on July 30th, a Fairy Tale game coming out on July 31st, the Crisis Remastered comes out on July 23rd, Dying Light comes out on the 23rd as well. I believe we also have Paper Mario come out on the 17th with Ghost of Tsushima. So some games to look forward to. Moving on, because we're getting close to August. August, we have a simulator that comes out. Jump Force comes out for the Switch. Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles Remastered comes out. Nothing really cool. Total War Saga Tron. Brawlhalla for the mobile stuff. Episode with Ubisoft. Nothing really cool for in August, but some games to look forward to later on in the year. This year as a whole has just been kind of stale, which is why we're going to talk about Ghost of Tsushima a couple minutes. But first, before we get to PlayStation, we have to discuss Microsoft. So Microsoft, uh, first off, they've been discontinued the Xbox One uh X and the Xbox One S digital edition ahead of the next Xbox. So they discontinued making production on the current Xbox. Uh Reason because of this is kind of, I think, a Xbox is supposed to be backwards compatible, meaning all the games from the current Xbox, meaning the Xbox One, are meant to be played on the new Xbox, being Xbox Series X. This is move from Microsoft just to cut production off. I think they're still making production on one of the iterations of the current Xbox One, but the rest of them they're just cutting back on production because there's no reason for them. They lost this console war in this, had a terrible launch. I think like launches are everything, because we saw when the PlayStation 3 was released, Sony was originally going to price that at like $600, and a lot of people weren't buying that. A lot of people were not going for that. And we saw throughout that life cycle, the Xbox 360 was miles ahead of the PlayStation. Now we get here where the current Xbox had a terrible launch and the PS4 had a great launch, and PS4 has been miles ahead of Xbox. So Xbox discontinuing this is not surprising. I think it's probably a smart move to shift manufacturing to the current Xbox, especially when it's backwards compatibility. It's sad that you won't be able to own one of these devices. I will make them anymore, but that goes for everything once in a while. Xbox is really making some serious moves with this, with the Game Pass, and of course now there's a rumor being spread around, and I don't usually do rumors like this on the show, but I think that's because if this happens for console, it's going to be huge. Is that they're trying to remove, or Xbox multiplayer could be coming free, so they're removing Xbox Live. I think why they would do this is more towards Game Pass, where they want you to buy Game Pass rather than Xbox Live. But because one of the worst parts about consoles, and the reason why I don't really do them so much, is that you have to pay $60 for 12 months compared to PC where it's just free. So them trying to shift, if they do shift away from this, is huge moves from Microsoft. They're really pushing on with this, next console generation. They're some big moves compared to Sony, and of course that we'll see those moves come to fruition when they talk about this, because there's rumored within the next couple of weeks that they're going to have their next press conference showing first party IPs that we talk, such as Halo on the console. So because Sony's been destroying that, with of course moving on, great segue into Ghost of Tsushima. So Ghost of Tsushima released July 17th, last Friday. Punch, same people who make the infamous series. It's rated M for mature. It's an open world genre game. The summary is it's set in the year 1274. Samurai warriors are defending Japan by the Mongol Empire, and you as the main character have to give up your samurai ways to become basically a ninja to fight the Mongols and reclaim your homeland. And I say that because so currently the Metacritic score it's sitting at 83 at the time of reviewing this, which is very good. It has a 9.2 user score, which is incredibly good. I think that is the highest user now on Metacritic. So like generally I like to look at user scores because they're a bit more honest, but they're also a bit more salty. So I like to compare the two, and just how good this game is being received is on looking at it. This was a resident sleeper for me. I've been looking at this game, and there's two things that stand out to me, and two pillars that I think Sucker Punch nailed, and I expect them to nail. The first, I think they did a great job They set out to make this game. They wanted the player to feel like a samurai, to feel like a shinobi in ancient Japan. They want you to feel like you're in uh, one of those old samurai flicks where the two dudes are staring each other down as the leaves from the trees fall down in the wind. They wanted you to feel like that in the game, and they nailed that. The aesthetic of this game is absolutely, whenever I look at this game and just look at some of the landscapes and the shots and like just what happens and how the wind flows throughout the games and the particle effects, they did an incredible job. One of the best I've seen. I get memorized by graphics. Shit looks pretty, but I've never seen anything like this. It's honestly kind of breathtaking, where I would actually sit down and just take screenshots of it. The second pillar that I think they nailed on is the honor system. It's known for its honor system. If you go a good route, you get special abilities that you don't get on the bad route. Whether you save people or good people or kill people is huge in the Infamous series. It's a big core mechanic and pillar of the, and they did that here, but it's so subtle at first that I did not notice it. It's different design choices and different play styles. The game tells you you're a samurai and you should fight with honor. So they have these things in the game where you walk up and you announce yourself to the enemy, and I'm like, I'm gonna fight you, here I come, and then you one shot them. And that's kind of the honor playstyle of a samurai, being the samurai that the game wants you to be. But then also it emphasizes that you shouldn't play this route. You should be more stealthy, more ninja, and that's like, lacking the honor. That's not the way of the samurai, is to hide in the shadows, but that's the more efficient method, and that's the way to defeat the Mongol Empire. Game Ghost of Tsushima, and doing these, you get flashbacks of your uncle telling you like, oh, this is not the way, as you move towards that path and you move towards more the stealthy route of being, rather ninja than upholding honor samurai. Honor system and decision making and how subtle it is, and the type of play styles that you have is incredible. It is incredible how they accomplish that. It's, I think, why this game is honestly, it's resident sleeper, and it is for game of the year, because it's a new IP. We're about to get into that talk on why this is really important and why new IPs are really important, because it's a new IP. Last of Us 2, it's a sequel. Of course it's gonna sell well. It didn't do well on the reviews so far. I think I got a lot of mixed feelings. Of course, you can watch my review episode on that, but of course it's gonna sell well. Same with Final Fantasy VII Remake. It's a remake. Of course it's going to sell well. Of course it's going to do well. It's a remake. And again, you can check out my review on that in our previous episodes. But those are definitely, Ghost of Tsushima, I think, is a game of the year contender. It is a resident sleeper, and I wish I didn't spoil as much as I did for myself, but it is definitely a game that I think that you should pick up and check out, because it is a game of the year contender, I think, for me. Anyway, with that being said, in the Ghost of Tsushima talk, let's get into my new IP talk, the intellectual properties talk. I hope you learned something. It's a good one. It's going to be enjoyable, and that's going to start right about now. All right, so for this week's show, I wanted to talk about intellectual properties, or kind of short term, or what they're called, IPs. Why don't we see as many of them as I would like to, and kind of the mindset behind them. So first off, what is an intellectual property? Well, it's basically something anyone creates, whether it's a manuscript or a design. So when Naughty Dog, for example, made The Last of Us Part 2, that's a new IP for them. When DC Comics produced the first Batman comic. That's the new IP for them. When George Lucas made the first Star Wars, that was a new IP. The most recent one, I guess, from PlayStation, you can say, Sucker Punch decided to leave the infamous series and create Ghost of Tsushima, which we talked about earlier. That is a new IP. So those new movies, Parasite, anything like that is considered a new IP. And in games, making a new IP is incredibly risky. And here's why. When you make a game, production is going up. Okay. So I haven't had this talk yet in the show, but there's rumors that with next gen console that we're going to try, we've seen byproducts of this, of subscription services being very pushed with like Xbox and Xbox Live Game Pass being heavily pushed. We see so we've seen that, and then we see things like rises where now games are trying to be pushed $70 instead of the standard 60 that we've known for years. So things like that are being pushed, and the reason because of that is because game production is going up. It cost Red Dead cost, I believe, $1 billion to make. It's costing more money to make video games because we have to pay for the new in the game passes. So especially with new consoles, that means there's new dev kits you have to pay for. Then you have to pay for employees, you have to pay for upgrades to workstations, internet, space costs, rent, all of that. Then you have to pay like Maya or whatever you're using. Then you got to pay for outsourcing, which a lot of companies do. So they're outsourcing production, pay for your employees, of course, pay for advertising, pay for there's a whole capture voice actors, of animation. There's so many things that you have to pay for now, and especially cutscenes cost a lot to make. There's so much of that you have that you need your game to sell. Like The Last of Us Part 2, they couldn't delay it any longer because the longer it's delayed, the more money it costs to make that game. You need that game to ship. You need it out there no matter how bad or good it is, and that's why we get into a lot of the situations that we do today. All right, so now get to current times, right? And you made The Last of Us Part 1. It was risky for you, but it sold extremely well. So what are you gonna do? Are you gonna make a new IP, or are you gonna continue with the sequel? Because the sequel is gonna sell. So what do? You make the sequel, because so that's why we get into a loop of sequel selling. We don't see new games at all because new games are riskier to make. We don't know if those are going to sell. Them making is a risk. If it doesn't do well, which currently it is, then it's it failed. You're not buying that. They lost money. It's a failed IP. They're probably never going to make Ghost of Tsushima 2, but because so successful and it wasn't a failed IP, we're gonna see Ghost of Tsushima 2. This is what we see with Zelda. Zelda is such a big name and such a big IP that they're going to always continue to make new Zelda games because they know those will. Same with Pokemon, same with Star Wars. They're safe. Companies are gonna make them because they're gonna know how to sell. Now, is this a problem? No, I like sequels, remakes, and as product or IP as much as the other dude does. Making a new Star Wars is always exciting to me. Making a new video game to a previous franchise that I love is always exciting to me. I like to see, where the story goes next, whether they finish or maybe they just want to remake a really old game, like how they reproduced Persona 4 on it's not really a remake, but like they ported it to Steam and just things like that. I love seeing those because like the problem with as things progress and technology goes on, a lot of games will probably not see the light of day. So I like, seeing new IPs because they get me excited, and I like seeing those and sequels. Now here's the mindset that it's difficult and we have to get out of. And I'm also in this mindset. It's a mindset of when Ghost of Tsushima looks. I asked my friend, what do you think of this game? And he says, "Oh, it just looks like Sekiro. Oh, it just looks like Assassin's Creed. Oh, it's just looks like this. Oh, it's just that." And the problem with that is that these games, they get compared to the best of the best. And of course they should. Why wouldn't they? But because of that, they never get a chance on their own 2 feet. And that's sad. And I'm outside of that mindset. With Ghost of Tsushima, and I'm using this example because it's the newest IP example that's come out that's been relatively successful. It's come out, and to me, I look at it. When I first saw it, it looked really cool when they showed it off at E3 all those years ago. And now it's come out, and gameplay wise, it's nothing impressive. People can compare to Breath of the Wild. Breath of the Wild's is an open world game. It is the best of the best, and it's good to compare it to that. But it's not as good as Breath of the Wild's open world. Then they compare it to like the old school Assassin's Creed. It's not, and it's a fair comparison. Those at all, and you're not looking at why Ghost of Tsushima is a great game. It's great, and it's a fantastic new IP, not because of its old predecessors, but because what it has accomplished and what they had that company accomplished with this game. Its design itself and its pillars itself, if you listen to our previous talk about design pillars, are nothing new. People reuse shit all the time. The best people who reuse shit, people who know how to make that their own and improve upon it. That's why you can say Hideo Kojima is so good, is because he's taken the base genre of Metal Gear and he's improved upon it tremendously. And that's why, like, you could say he's a good designer, is because he does that. He does those things. He just takes simple things that people have already done, he improves upon it. And you see this time is, they're cliches for a reason. They work, and they're there because they work. Same thing with IPs, like we produce and reuse those ideas, reuse those things because they work. Ghost of Tsushima does have old school Assassin's Creed mechanics in it. It's those their pillars are something new, but the two pillars that I think are why it's such a brand new good IP and why it's so refreshing and people go under the radar is the game. And what Sucker Punch has always been good at is their honor system. So you got to look at IPs for things like that. Those are what brings these games to, helps them stand on its own 2 feet. Sekiro was nothing new. It was just Dark Souls remastered. But why it was so good is because they put in time to improve a that was has been done before, but really flush it out and really design it well and design its aesthetic well. And of course, it's from Dark Souls, so they're the masters of that genre, but accomplish its own new set as an IP, with that combat system being as fun and as fluent as it is, and nothing has really come close to it. Breath of the Wild, there's been tons of open world games, and Breath of the Wild succeeded because of how its realism in the world, because you could cut down a tree and use it as a bridge. That's why Breath of the Wild succeeded. And that's even though, again, it's Zelda and Zelda's a new IP, but if you look, it is completely different from any other Zelda game that they've done. So you could argue that Breath of the Wild is a new IP. So what I'm really trying to get at, and I hope you guys like understand like as we see with IPs and the thought process behind them, is that you really have to be open to these new ideas. I myself am victim of this, where I look at these games and it's just like, oh, it looks like Assassin's Creed. Yes, as a game designer, I will, and I'll see those things being represented in these games, but you have to always be encouraging of new IPs and be and see them for what they are, and they are good in their own right, and get out of that mindset. Because if we continue to think like this and continue to compare it to the best, and they can never stand on their own 2 feet and look good as new games, we would never have we would never have Zelda. We would never have Mario. We would never have fucking Pac-Man. We would never have any of these because we're comparing them to previous things. We would never have new films like Parasite. We would never have a new Star. We would never have the Star. Have the series that you love, because you're comparing them to things of previous past, whether it's books, novels, or anything like that. So really understand what new IPs mean, recognize them for what they do good, and why we need them, because we need the new creative juice to keep on going. I've been saying this for years, but like me personally, because we're just in a culture state, like since 2013, I would say 2012 really, we haven't seen anything that's been new or refreshing. It has really blown anything out of the water. Like the biggest probably that comes to mind would be like maybe games popularity would be a big example of that. But like overall, it's been relatively slow creative wise, because people are scared to make new products and they just want to reuse and remake all the old stuff. Consumers, even though we may be happy to get on that nostalgia train, we can't be doing that, and we have to look towards the future and towards new products. WoW's a perfect example of this. People called for classic, they got classic, enjoying classic, of course, but as you can tell, that there's problems in classic that are not problems in current WoW, that current WoW is facing a whole different set of problems, and people want to fix current WoW because current WoW is the future. WoW isn't. It's the same thing applies to new IPs and anything that we go to. When Final Fantasy's director, when they did classic WoW, Final Fantasy's director said that their competitor wasn't classic, it was still current WoW. So it's always, the past is good and you should learn from the past, but you can't compare the future to the past, because we need to always keep going forward with the future and with new products. Listening to this week's episode of It's Not a Sport. I hope you enjoyed our talk. It was a very fun talk for me to do personally. To or watch on our YouTube channel all of our past shows. They're all archived on our YouTube channel. And make sure to also check out our website, it's notasport.com. You can listen to our podcasts each on SoundCloud, Spotify, or iTunes, any platform of your choosing. And make sure to follow us on social media. Leave a like, that always helps out, and a comment just to know if you have any talks that you want me to back. It's always greatly appreciated. I hope you guys are having a wonderful week. This is your host, Salty Waffles, signing off, and I hope you guys are having a wonderful class.